I am a part of the 1%. And even for me, the quality of life is not that great because how many of us will be able to fight the system? I don't think I have the guts or the capability to fight even the lowest level government employee. But over the next decade, I think India is not really that great of an option from a work perspective or from an economic growth perspective for you as an individual.
Hi everyone, I'm back with another episode. In this episode, I get a chance to speak with Ravi Handa. Ravi is known for starting Handa, which he later sold to an academy. In this episode, we mostly talk about what are the pros and cons of staying in India versus taking a chance to go abroad. We get into a lot of detail about this topic. So if you are over 20 or if you've just started your career or if you're in the early stages of your career and you're exploring whether you should continue staying in India or you should try opportunities or look for opportunities abroad, I think this episode might be useful for you. We get into the reasons why somebody should decide to move abroad and what are the problems of staying in India. So that is like part one of the conversation. In part two of the conversation, we talk about fire. In the second part of the conversation, we mostly talk about financial independence and early retirement. What are the factors? What can you do? How much do you need to save? So some of the factors that kind of lead into somebody achieving fire. So if you're interested in that, you should probably skip directly to the second part of the conversation. We had a lot of, due to my stupidity, we had a lot of audio issues and video issues in this episode. I will try not repeating this, but I really want to apologize to Ravi and to listeners and viewers who are watching this. I hope this is the last time I face this issue. But please bear with me. All I can say is, if it's any consolation, I think Ravi's insights more than make up for my blunder here. Anyways, thank you for listening. And with that, my friends, Ravi, Handa.
Again, thank you so much for doing this. I wanted to start off with the same question that I think most people grapple with is when they have just graduated or they have just started working professionally, either a new job or after working for a few years, is whether they should continue working in India or they should explore opportunities abroad. This is the question. Even once you start working, if you see that your salary increments are not happening that regularly or they're not as you have expected them to be, there is a question that should they continue staying in this country or leave abroad for better opportunities. So this is, I think one is on the economic side, but also second on the standard of living side. We obviously see Bollywood movies. In generally, when we see them, the roads are much cleaner, the houses are much neater, the traffic is much lesser than what we see in Bangalore streets. Obviously, India is not Bangalore per se, but I'm just painting a broad picture here. So how should one think about this? If somebody's making a decision today to kind of explore, their various options very closely, what parameters should they be thinking through, and how should they go about their compass?
Sure. See, what a lot of people, when they're trying to evaluate the opportunities, they tend to take a short-term view. Okay, what happens in the next 2 years? What happens in the next 5 years? I believe when you are thinking about such a big decision, this is probably as big as a decision as what you're going to do in your career, whether you're going to become an engineer or you're going to take the MBA route or you're going to become a doctor, etc. These sort of decisions should be taken at least with a decade or more sort of a view. If you are evaluating it today, we don't know what the world is going to look like in the next 20 years. As of today, if you look for the next decade, India is growing. I agree. But over the next decade, I think India is not really that great of an option from a work perspective or from an economic growth perspective for you as an individual. Now, Indian economy is probably one of the fastest growing economies in the world. I fully understand that. I agree with that completely, that yes, the India growth story is intact. Yes, there will be some temporary hiccups along the way, but the India growth story is intact. However, for you as an individual, the opportunities that exist in India are fairly limited. So whether you take the education route or you find a job abroad, in all of those options, how your career is going to shape up is going to be significantly better if you move abroad. Because let's say if you talk about the developed world, and I'm not just talking about the developed world, let's say US, Canada, UK, I'm talking about even if you can find something in Dubai or even if you can find something in places like Singapore, even those options are going to be significantly better than working in India because of multiple reasons. There are obviously the amount of money that you are going to make is going to be significantly better. Then comes the quality of life argument. The quality of life in India, frankly speaking, I am a part of the 1%. And even for me, the quality of life is not that great because I can live in a fancy house, I can drive in a fancy car, but I still have to breathe the same polluted air. And worried about drinking water in most restaurants, so I'll probably be ordering mineral water. For drinking from tap water is not something that I've experienced in India anywhere. I don't really think there is any city in India where I can open up the tap and drink water without any sort of a filtration system. On the other hand, if you go abroad, these are considered basics. I mean, no one even questions that. Obviously, you are going to drink that water. And I do remember the first time I traveled to Europe was in Ireland, Dublin is where I went. And I was wondering, okay, so it was an Airbnb host, and I asked them, okay, where is the drinking water? And those guys were surprised that, okay, what do you mean by drinking water? Drink from anything. Is there some sort of filtration system? Where do I do? It's like just use the kitchen sink that gives you clean water. Is there any sort of supply issue? The questions left them dumbfounded because they hadn't experienced someone asking for clean water. I hadn't experienced that you can just get it from tap water. And it's not just water. It exists in food. Adulteration in food in India is rampant. It exists in the quality of air. It exists in the quality of education that you end up getting in India is severely compromised. Yes, there are good elite institutions in India, no doubt about it. But once you move beyond the, let's say, the top 5% of the education infrastructure of India, whether it is in schools or in colleges, universities, postgrad, beyond the top 5%, the quality of education is really, really poor. Some people will argue that even in the top 5%, the quality of education is not that great, but let's leave that aside. For the 95% of the education infrastructure which exists in India is fairly crappy. I'd like to give some examples. There exists universities, so I come from Jaipur. There exists universities in Jaipur. The entire university exists. There is a vice chancellor who is there. There is a registrar who is there. And it doesn't have a single student. So it's...
Why so?
Please ask the guys running the education department why. So I'm forgetting the exact name. So it's the Divyang University, which is essentially made for differently abled people.
Okay.
And it has been there for years, and they haven't been able to get an intake. You look at most of the government universities across India, whether it's Rajasthan University, whether it is Patna University, the quality of education there is extremely poor, and that is where bulk of the students are going. Forget that. Even if you look at something like CBSE, which is considered the gold standard, and large number of students go take the CBSE route for 10th and 12th. Very recently, there is a case that came out. They uploaded someone else's answer sheet, and so suppose it was your paper, but you got marks on my paper. And then you had to go and contest that, no, I did not write this paper. And then, first of all, the authorities denied it. Then there were people who said that, no, this guy is a Pakistani. And then finally, eventually, CBSE accepted its mistake and, fixed this. But this was one kid who fought the system and he eventually won. How many of us will be able to fight the system? Mm-hmm. I don't think I have the guts or the capability to fight even the lowest level government employee. I'm not talking about the IAS and the IPS of the world. I'm talking about the traffic guy who has stopped me. Even if I have not done anything wrong, it will be very difficult for me to get out of that conversation. Yeah. So all of those issues, if you talk about the traffic which exists. So we have a huge population which puts a lot of pressure on the infra and all those is there. But because we come from a scarcity mindset, everyone wants to sort of bypass the system, not follow the rules, which makes it chaotic for everybody.
Sorry, what is the scarcity mindset?
The scarcity mindset, essentially, I would argue that because there are less resources and more people are vying for those resources, so everyone knows those resources are scarce, So we try and optimize that. Okay, let me grab those resources and shut a few other people out. Otherwise, so one very simple example would be, why don't people follow lane discipline in India? Because if I'm following the lane discipline and you are following the lane discipline, if there is a third guy who overtakes us and comes from the side, he is going to get there first. So until and unless everyone follows traffic rules and everyone follows lane discipline, the people who are following it, they will lose out. So they will end up wasting more time. And that's the scarcity mindset. But the scarcity mindset in India is prevalent in various ways. There are so few seats in the education system. There are so few jobs which are available. In India, it is very difficult to find people who will have an open mindset about sharing their knowledge, sharing their information, sharing job opportunities, sharing insights that they have. So there are people who are building companies. I do hang out with a few entrepreneurs. So let's say if they want to go to a VC to get funding, people don't, I'm saying that some great people are there. Most people will not introduce you to a VC because they think that, oh, if I give out this introduction, it reduces the chances of me getting funded and in later, because if I'm working in the same space. You would not find this sort of culture in the valley and in most places across the globe. The collaborative spirit does not really exist. I don't know if you've heard the concept of crab mentality, which is there. That, once again, I'm not saying it's there in 100% of the Indians, but
That is
the
what
vast
here,
majority.
crab mentality is you're pulling the other person down.
You're pulling the other person down because you don't really want anyone else to go up and to be in the same pool. And that exists. I'm sure that exists abroad as well. But the percentage of people with that sort of mentality is going to be more in a place where where resources are scarce. And India is a resource-starved country. We don't have enough jobs, enough quality of education, clean water, and all of those. So people have to fight for very, very basic things.
You mentioned one is the scarcity mindset and also the crab mentality. Any insight on like where does this stem from? Is it because most Indians are poor? Is it poverty that leads to this, or is it parental upbringing?
I think poverty plays a significant role. I would believe that it basically stems from the amount of population that we have. And for the vast population, there just aren't enough resources. So everyone has to fight for the same set of resources. I believe the number, I'm not sure of the exact number, but close to 80 crore people in India have to depend on the government just to eat. So if there are 80 crore people who cannot afford to eat on their own and they need government assistance for that, what can you do? So there will be, the tax paying, the salaried folks, the people who are watching this podcast who understand English, they are by default in the top 5% of the country. But the laws of the place, the policies which are made, they are made for the 100% of the people. And the first right on those resources, when the government is allocating it, it has. So I'm not saying that the government is doing the wrong thing by giving so much free food out or the large number of welfare schemes the government runs. You have to run those schemes. So people complain about, the Ladli Beti Yojana or the government soft that gave out. I think that has to be done. Because if you don't do that, the poverty, which is still existent in India, things will get much, much worse. Why a large number of people feel bad about them that, oh, our taxes are getting wasted. Yes, taxes get wasted in each and every country. That's not unique to India. The problem is the people who are paying taxes in India, they get very little benefits. So that is why it looks really awkward.
Like I've never heard like even my colleagues, right? Like everybody just cribs about like paying taxes, and the general crib is that even I was talking to one of my previous managers, and even he was like what am I paying the 30% for? He was looking to move to Dubai or New Zealand because he's looking to have a baby, and he really doesn't want to raise his kid here. And he doesn't see any benefit of him paying 30%, like the roads that he travels on.
Absolutely, there is no benefit for him.
Yeah.
The benefit is for the 80 crore Indians who need food, who need government assistance to eat food. So you need to think of it. So taxes may be coming from that 2%, 5% of the people, income taxes. And to be really honest, even the poorest of the poor pay taxes in India. We tend to look at direct taxes and indirect taxes. GST, everyone is paying GST when they're buying a 5 rupee Parle G biscuit packet. So everyone is paying taxes, one. But who has the first right on those taxes? The government has to decide who has the first right on those taxes. And if the government decides that the first right on the tax money which is collected should be directed towards the vast majority of Indians, I believe it's perfectly fair. Is there corruption? Is there wastage? Yes, that is there. Should those things go down? Yes, they should. But expecting the government to cater to the 2% versus the 70% of people who need government assistance for food, I think that's wrong expectation. So the manager that you're talking about, from his point of view, it's a perfectly valid argument. If I'm paying a shopkeeper 100 rupees, I want goods worth rupees 100 rupees. Here, when you take that sort of a mindset, it looks fair. If I'm paying 100 rupees in taxes, I need to get some worth out of it. But you cannot really look at it like that. You are paying 100 rupees not to a shopkeeper to give you something. You are paying that 100 rupees to stay in India, to follow the rules here, to stay out of jail. How those 100 rupees need to be distributed, that is the government's call. And the government will always favor the vast majority which exists. Now, if you are not part of that majority, that is the reason that you are paying taxes. So what do? One of the possible options is that you make so much money that even if you are leaving aside the 30% of taxes, the 70% is good enough for you and you live your life. Or B, you move to a country where you don't have to pay that amount of taxes, or at least you get something in return for those taxes. So I don't really think that the top 2% who are paying that, top 2%, 1%, I don't really have the exact number of the people who are paying those 30% of taxes. If they're expecting something from the government, I believe that expectation is not going to be fulfilled for a very, very long time. At least not in the next decade or so. And that is why what do you do for the next decade or so? You move abroad where you can at least perhaps get some return for your taxes.
So before I probe this further, maybe the first question I have to ask you is like, why are you still here? Like, I mean, in the sense that you have made enough to kind of not work full time, but you're still working. Anyways, but that's a separate question. So you have the resources, you have the knowledge, you know how like you have went to different countries. Is it inertia or is it just?
So there are plenty of reasons behind it. The biggest reason I believe is because of the sort of upbringing that I had. So my parents were government servants. I generally asking, if you ask me, list down all the schools that you have studied at. I cannot even name all the schools that I have studied at because I kept on getting transferred from here to there to there. Both of my parents were government servants. So sometimes my dad got transferred, sometimes my mom got transferred, and I kept on shifting schools. And in that period, I found it very difficult, very odd, and I wanted to have some sort of a base location, somewhere I could, sort of put in my roots. Over the last decade or so, I've put those roots in Jaipur. So it is not that it is difficult for me to leave India. It is difficult for me to leave Jaipur as well. For me, going from Jaipur to Dubai or Jaipur to Singapore or Jaipur to Bangalore is an equally difficult decision because I am well settled in Jaipur. That's one. Second is because I have parents who are close to 80 years of age. So I would want to spend as much time as possible that is left with them. The third is I have made, I would believe, enough amount of money to continue and not give a shit about, living in India. I can live on this money very easily. And can I still do that if I essentially move abroad? I don't think so. Moving abroad without a career, without a job, theoretically you can just buy for a long-term visa or a passport and still move abroad. But to continue living there, I don't have that amount of money where if I can lead a fire lifestyle in India, I don't think I'll be able to lead a fire lifestyle in Canada or a fire lifestyle in Dubai because the cost of living is significantly more there. Some people even argue that firing in Jaipur is significantly easier than firing in Bangalore, because even the cost of living in Jaipur versus Bangalore is also significantly different. So that's another one of the reasons.
Sorry, I should bring that up maybe later on in the conversation. Like when people think about fire, like probably you should think about the fire that they're expecting to be in that particular city. Or I think it's very different. Like I'm from Bangalore, and I think it's very different to have a fire number in Bangalore versus Bangalore as well. So I don't know. Maybe later on we can trust this out.
Sure.
On the we spoke about you broadly laid out the reasons why somebody should move abroad, but one question is there like is it specifically for people who have, let's say, studied computer science, biotechnology, or people in STEM fields? Do you think this advice mostly resonates with them? Not resonate. I mean, is it applicable more for them, or is this a blanket advice for even, let's say, somebody who has only graduated 12th and maybe they cannot afford to? Okay, for them, if they cannot afford to, maybe then they have no choice but to continue living in India, make enough money, and then go abroad. So I'm just trying to understand like is this a blanket advice for any educated person, or is it applicable for anyone?
It's easier for folks in STEM.
Okay.
So, it's going to be much harder for, let's say, BCom graduate to move abroad. It's going to be
Why so?
the amount of opportunities are going to be lesser. It's going to be very difficult for him to find a job abroad. So for him, probably doing an MBA is the option. Do an MBA from abroad, but an MBA from abroad is often very expensive, and perhaps if he cannot afford that. So the point is, if you can, then it is a blanket advice. But I believe that, I don't know what the number would be, but let's say if 80% of folks who are working in computer science in India can move abroad, maybe 30% of BCom graduates in India can move abroad. However, anyone who can, they should. So this is sort of a blanket advice for anyone who gets an opportunity, they should. So, and to be really honest, I would argue that, and which we have seen in the demographics, people without any qualifications, if they get some sort of an opportunity, which is very rampant in Punjab, for example, they get an opportunity to move abroad, to become, to do, let's say, minimum wage jobs. If they can find such an opportunity, if there is some way that they can move abroad, it's extremely hard for them. But if they do find, then yes, it is applicable for them also. See, for them, what you need to compare is what are the opportunities a BCom graduate has in India. If he goes abroad, the sort of opportunities that he will have there, they are going to be better. So this is indeed a blanket advice for anyone who can. It's just easier for folks in STEM. It's even easier for com science graduates. It's even easier for com science graduates from top colleges. It's even easier for com science graduates from top colleges who are working at the top tech companies which are in India. So let's say if there is someone from Razorpay who is a senior engineer at Razorpay, if that guy decides to move abroad, it's going to be significantly easier for him to move abroad than, let's say, someone who is a BCom graduate and earning 25,000 rupees a month in a credit card sales job of sorts.
I'm just curious, like, knowing what I mean. These arguments are persuasive, but I have to be honest. I am slightly biased towards this thinking as well. So, but if we take it on face value, why do you think? Because there are people who will also encourage people to stay in India, knowing what they already know. And I think this advice also generally comes from the 1% or the top 2% or whatever it is, or for generally well-to-do in life. Any speculation on why people might recommend people to just stay in India and work in India? Is it some people can genuinely be passionate about the country. They do have that my India and it's good as well. But is it that due to that affection of the country that they want their? I think Sridhar, I think, posted the recent he made that comment that I think he went really far. I mean, he was saying that whoever is there, come back. Like, it's not that don't go. Like, if you're going, come back. So, like, is this like devotion to the country and that that leads him to make that argument, or is that?
Yes, I can see there are. It's primarily. I don't think it's based in analytical thinking. It's based more on the emotional thinking, and we do make emotionally irresponsible decisions. All of us do. Having a kid is a very bad decision if you think about it analytically.
Okay.
It costs a lot. It drains a lot of energy. A large portion of your life just get dedicated to your kid, and a lot of your decisions are taken on the basis of what your kid wants to do, and you will try and make that happen. One of my batchmates, his son literally was JE rank 1, I think this year or last year. And to make that happen, he had to make a lot of sacrifices. He had to move locations, he had to move his houses, he had to dedicate enough amount of time to stuff like this. Obviously, the kid is brilliant. You don't get rank 1 in India and anything just like that. But if you look at it from an analytical point of view, why is he doing all this? He is doing all this from an emotional point of view. And from an emotional point of view, I think, so whether it is Sridhar or anyone else who is making this argument, he is making it for the love of the country, for the things that they value emotionally. It is not really an analytical argument that you can make in favor of having a kid or staying in India. Having a kid improves your quality of life, but your quality of life is, and more often than not, it's an emotional decision. So I would put it the same way. For the people who are saying this, I don't really think that it's a rational argument that they are making. It is an emotional argument that they are making. The emotion could be the love for the country. The emotion could be that I want to, maybe it's not the country, but I want to help a large number of people. The sort of impact that you can have on lives in India is going to be significantly more than the amount of impact that you would probably make living in Canada. Because how much of the life of an average Canadian you will be able to change? Or let's say you work in a field where you are teaching, just as an example, because I have been a teacher for a long part of my career. As a teacher, the amount of students that I can teach, the improvement that I can cause in their lives is going to be much, much, much more in India, because Indian students are starved of good quality teachers. I can never have that sort of an impact in anywhere in the developed world, because they have the high number of good quality teachers who are available to teach. So that is another emotional argument, that how do you make an impact, and that improves the quality of life. It gives people purpose in life. That, okay, why are you alive? What is the purpose? People can have different purposes, and helping other people is a great purpose to have. The amount of help that you can do towards other people in India is probably more than most places. And this is valid for teachers as well. This is valid for doctors as well. This is valid for in almost any field, the amount of impact that you can have in India in improving the lives of people. So let's say, so one of the arguments that you could make is the Swiggies and the Zomatos of the world, they are exploiting cheap labor that is available in India to fill their offers. That's one argument. Another argument that they could be make is that it is because of those people, the large amount of jobs that they have created, and because these guys who are essentially working in the field of delivery workers in India, they would not have had any other option. And these guys are making anywhere from, I don't have the numbers exactly, but my guess is anywhere from 25,000 to 75,000 rupees is what these folks would be making in most months. If this did not exist, if Swiggy, Zomato, delivery guys did not exist, I don't think those guys would have had an option of making 25,000 to 75,000 rupees a month. So the impact that these guys have had here, you would need to be Jeff Bezos there to have that sort of an impact. But yeah, so that's the emotional argument I believe that these people are making.
Yeah, because I don't see any vested interest as well. I mean, I don't know, I don't know how he will benefit. It's either signaling that you're signaling to other people that you're patriotic.
There could be that reason as well for a lot of people, that they do want to signal.
Yeah.
So signaling is, but that's believing that everyone is a bad person. I would rather like to believe that everyone is a good person.
Agreed.
And he's emotional rather than rational. But I do believe that a large number of people are also making this sort of an argument from a signaling sort of perspective. I forgot to say that patriotism is the last refuge of these scoundrels.
Oh.
So I'm sure that there are people who are pretending to be patriotic for the same reasons. And you can actually see that in case of a large number of the traditional powerful people, the politicians in India, the bureaucrats in India. If you look at what they do for their kids, so their kids are not studying in government schools. Their kids very rarely, I'm not saying that none of them, but very rarely do their kids study in India itself for their graduation and post-graduation. Their kids are not really settling in India as much. Why? So they can pretend and give big speeches about the India shining story and the India growth story. Their kids aren't exactly following that. And I'm sure there is a reason, because even they understand that, going abroad is better for their kids. And that's broadly what I would say, that either they are bad people, but I think there are very few bad people. Most people are nice people. But there will be a few of them. Broadly, I think it stems from the emotional argument of love for the country, love for the people around them, making an impact, making lives better, and sort of purpose in life.
Now, somebody who's definitely, now let's assume somebody has heard us till here and now is really looking to make that call. Can I make the assumption that it becomes really difficult to kind of move after, let's say, you're 35 or so?
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you have to make that decision before 35?
Yeah, absolutely. So the sooner you do it, the better.
Uh,
If you can get out of India after 12th, please do that. But it's very expensive. It's very, very difficult. It becomes a little easier after graduation. It becomes even
Sorry, why does it become easier after graduation?
cost of education. No? So if you're graduating from abroad, it's a 3-year or a 4-year degree course that you are doing. The amount of scholarships that are available for a 3-year or a 4-year course, graduation course, are much lesser than the scholarships that you get for the post-grad as well. And someone who has just passed 12th is not that mature, that independent enough that he will be able to live independently abroad on their own. So all of these things are much harder when you have just cleared 12th. Things become easier. Postgrad education is still competitive, but it is not as competitive as the graduation one. The cost of postgrad is significantly lower than the cost of graduation abroad in most cases.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a 2-year course typically
Okay.
versus a 3-year or a 4-year course, because there is a lot of cost of living. There is the tuition which is involved. Both those factors come into the picture. The third is the amount of scholarships that you get. Getting a scholarship to anywhere in post-graduation is going to, you pick up any random college. The percentage of people who are there on these sort of scholarships, percentage of Indians there on scholarship, you will always find in post-graduation the percentage is significantly higher. Because it's easier, less competition is there. You have done, enough amount of academic work. You have worked hard in your graduation so that you can actually prove that you are deserving of that scholarship. Till 12th, at the end of the day, what do you do in India? In most cases, you are just studying. I want good marks. I want to clear some sort of competition. We don't really have that many well-rounded individuals after 12th in comparison, versus you are far more independent as well after graduation. And let's say after post-graduation, let's say within the first 2-3 years of your career, that is when you should be actively hunting for opportunities. Once you cross 35, plenty of things happen. You would have settled in some particular...
By settle,
place.
you mean get married and maybe...
Get married, you might be married, you might have a kid, your parents have become significantly older. And even those countries, they don't really want that many, folks in their 40s coming in. Because they want the younger workforce to come in. So yes, it does become significantly harder once you cross 40. I think Canada has a very transparent system of PR points that they give out. And I think they have cut off at 35. So post 35, the number of PR points, I don't have the exact structure, but post 35, you get very little points because you're on the wrong side of 30s.
And yeah, I mean, My sister's in Canada, and she was telling me the same thing that, because she was trying to convince me to move abroad. I don't have the courage. I just don't have the courage to uproot myself and go there and start a new life. I just don't have that courage. So that's something
You don't have that courage today. 10 years down the line, it would become much, much harder. So if you have to do it, so if you take a call today that you have to do it, probably you'll be able to do it in a year or 2 years or 3 years. But if you take that call 10 years down the line, it's going to be significantly harder because you don't want to uproot yourself. Your roots will be much further. You will probably be married, have a kid in 10 years, and things get much harder as you age. You will be much less flexible about the things you're willing to do and you're not willing to do once you are 35 versus when you are 25. It does become harder.
But she was saying the same thing that, after, you can make that call now, but after 30, it's going to get really difficult for you. So, she was pushing me to kind of do that. Anyways, I don't want to share my soft stories here. So we have spoken much about the reasons to kind of leave the country. I do want to ask you genuinely, are there reasons to stay? I mean, if somebody hears all this and he or she is like, fine, I know the infra is bad. Fine, I know there's a lot of competition. I still want to stay. Are there good enough reasons to stay, or how would you paint that picture? I don't know.
I would say that it's an emotional argument.
Again, okay.
So it's an emotional thing. So if you feel, emotionally connected to this place, then yes, because at the end of the day, you need to feel happy. And if being with your parents makes you happy, if participating in various sort of activities, the sort of culture. So India has a very mingling sort of a culture, which is not there abroad. So I have a bunch of friends who are in Canada, for example, and they very often complain about the feeling of loneliness, the feeling of alienation which exists there. So yeah, it could be an emotional reason which leads you to stay here. Could be parents, could be your own things, could be, again, it could be the impact thing. The amount of difference that you can make in people's lives in India is immense. So those could be the reasons. But I think there is an argument to be made economically as well, that let's say if there is some sort of unique opportunity that you can exploit in India, then that could be the case. But those sort of opportunities which you can uniquely exploit in India is very, very little.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know if this is an emotional reason, but some people may not want to go because they don't like outsiders. Is that I mean?
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's an emotional, cultural.
Yeah.
It's a cultural reason. See, it would be stupid to deny that idiots exist in all parts of the globe. You will find, people telling you to go back to your own country. But you will find those idiots in India as well.
Yeah.
You will find people in Bangalore as well telling folks from North India to, go back to your state. So idiots exist everywhere. It is, what sort of idiocy, what sort of idiotic behavior you are willing to tolerate.
And for what money?
And for what money? So
everything has a price.
Yeah. So that exists. So that is potentially a reason. The other thing is that a large number of people are culturally not aligned to the sort of westernized culture which exists. We tend to be extremely nosy, which is not really a phenomena that exists across the globe. I have seen people, and so Jaipur is an example that I like to give. Jaipur doesn't really have a flat culture, as in flats, big housing societies. Jaipur is still very much a colony-based culture where there are independent houses and stuff. And what's happening with somewhere else? So they are very friendly with their neighbors. There is some sort of activity which happens in their colonies with their neighbors, and they're very well connected. You don't find that sort of connection that exists in the housing societies which exist. And I have had that argument with large number of my friends in Jaipur who live in houses. I just tell them, boss, living in a flat is so much more convenient. There are so many facilities that a housing complex can provide you. There are pools, there are activities for kids, and you don't really. I genuinely don't even know all the four people who live above me and the four people below me, and I'm not that connected, and that's personally fine with me. People who are living in colonies, they see that as a problem. I see that as a problem of privacy. If anyone and everyone knows what I'm doing, if I'm having a party at my house, etc. But people want that sort of a connection. So people find it difficult to move from a colony-based culture to a flat-based culture even. And my parents are apart. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. So my parents used to, when I moved to Jaipur in 2015, I directly moved into a housing complex.
Oh.
My parents used to live in a house that they had. It took me 5 years to convince them to move to a flat because they were very, very comfortable in the colony culture. I know everyone here. There is, I have connections here. It will be very difficult for me to make connections in a new place. So there was an uprooting element.
Yeah.
But there was also an argument that, housing complexes, flats are really cold. They don't have a warm feeling about them.
Fancy prisons, I say.
Yeah. So a lot of people feel that way. So, I can keep on giving rational arguments how about living in a housing complex is significantly better than an independent house. In an independent house, if the electricity goes, it's your problem. If something stops working, it's your problem. You have to figure out. In a housing, you don't have space. Often, you don't have big houses where your kids can play around. In a housing complex provides that. You cannot have a swimming pool in your house. Until and unless you're uber rich, you will not have a swimming pool in your house. But most housing societies have these multiple facilities. But so that is all a rational argument that I can make for people to move. But people find it difficult to move in the same city from a colony to a housing complex for emotional reasons. Analytically, this would be better, but it doesn't happen. So it's the same argument that can be extended to moving from Jaipur to Bangalore or from Bangalore to Seattle.
So I think right now, I think there's sort of like segueing into fire as well, in the sense that what does it mean to have a good life, or like, how can you have a good life? In the sense that I don't know if this is the right segue, but like when you spoke about, can you have a swimming pool? Not everyone can have a swimming pool, but I feel the thinking again, this sort of connects to like why people may not also choose to go abroad, is because I feel many people assume that they will not be average, in their outcomes, right? In their life outcomes. I do feel like many people might think that India is average, and the average income is $3,000, but my income will be $30,000, or my income will be. I don't know how true that might be in terms of I don't know, just because due to the opportunities or things like that, or how much money they'll end up making. Maybe there might be a disconnect. Is that a fair argument? Or
I see you. If you can speak in English in India, you will be in the top 2% of India. If you are a first generation immigrant who is going abroad, it's highly unlikely that you are not going to be Sundar Pichai, and forget Sundar Pichai, you are not going to be a Google engineer as well. It's highly unlikely that you will end up becoming an engineer at Google and be in the 1% or top 2%, top 5% there. You will probably be a little above the median. So what you're essentially comparing is that, okay, I'm in 1% here versus I'm the 30th percentile there. So why should I become a 30th percentile person versus a 1% here? I think that's the wrong way of looking at things. What you need to look at is that how is my life as a 1%er here versus how is my life as a 30th percentile there? Yes, here you are, top of the top, and there you are slightly above average. Why do I want to move from the top to slightly above average? That's the wrong way of looking at things. What you need to look at is, what is it that I'm getting here? How happy I am here? Is the probability, you don't know until and unless you go, is the probability of me being happier higher abroad or higher in India? For most people, I believe if you leave aside the emotional aspects, and emotions form a large part of being happy. So if you leave the emotions are different for everyone. So that's one part of it. But if you leave the emotional aspect, 30th percentiler there will have a better life than a 1 percentiler here, because of the same infra, pollution, corruption, adulterated food, adulterated toxic air, adulterated water, people fights on the road, large number of people. So yeah, those challenges don't really go away, and it's perfectly okay being a 30th percentiler, because what do you get as a 1 percentiler here?
Mhm.
Not much.
Can we spend maybe the last 10 minutes talking about fire? Maybe if that's okay.
Sure,
with you? Yeah,
sure.
I think we covered a lot of like I think abroad like dynamics. On the fire dynamics again, you have spoken about this in multiple forums. So I don't know what new things we can talk about, but generally was curious on like I was looking at my life itself. Somebody who is let's say an IT employee who is again lazy, doesn't want to work 9 to 5, wants to get up every morning at whatever time he wants. So, like, how can, because I feel like, and correct me if my assumption is wrong here, that I feel like it's very difficult even with an IT salary, unless you're making like 70, 80 LPA, maybe, then maybe you can save for a few years. And if it's a double income family, maybe then also you can, club your savings and then reach at a higher number, maybe. But beyond that, if you don't start saving early, and if you're not starting with a higher pay salary itself, it becomes very difficult to kind of, reach a number that you are comfortable living with. So this is point one. Sorry, it may be a little too many questions here, but this is one point. Second is, while thinking about fire itself, do we have to kind of, I don't know, like have a lifestyle in mind and not deviate too much from that lifestyle, because that might cause us to either work a few years. Is there a compromise needed there in terms of the lifestyle that you probably want to have? So if you can maybe
Sure, sir. See, the core idea, and I believe that I am a part of the problem when a lot of, conversations I do about fire is because I did it very early. So I pulled the plug when I was around 40.
okay.
So at to be able to, sort of fire at 40, plenty of things worked out for me. I have been extremely lucky. My parents were never dependent on me for anything. So as I said, they're close to 80, but they are still not dependent on me because they were government employees. They have government pensions coming in and they have very little expenses, and they can live off that. Secondly, what happened was my wife is well educated. She's a CA, so she had a career of her own. Third was that I had a kid very late in life. So
Can I ask when?
I had a kid in 2020, so I was 37.
Oh.
So I had a kid very late in life. I started a business and that business worked really well. Then the business itself got acquired by an academy. So these 5 things which happened, it's extremely difficult for some. So even if just couple of these things happen, they pull back, let's say traditional retirement at 60. I would believe that any of these things shaves off 5 years of your work life. So because of all of these things, I was able to retire at 40 instead of, let's say, retire at 60. But you shouldn't really be looking at retiring at 40 or retiring at 45 or retiring at 35. Once you set that sort of an anchor, it can be a problem. You can feel that you are being left behind, and what's the point of all this? What you should ideally be looking at is, okay, if I don't do anything, I will be forced to retire at 60. Can I do something and make that decision of my own? Even if you are doing it at 59, you are still saving 1 year. Even if you are doing it at 58, you are saving 2 years. If you retire early, so 58 is earlier than 60, 52 is earlier than 60. So even if you are retiring in your early 50s, that is still an early retirement.
Can I jump in here? But yeah, I don't see how age is relevant here, in the sense that, I mean, even if you're 60, but if you don't have enough purpose, like if you don't have enough money to live the life you're currently leading at 59, 60, whatever that is, then you still have to continue working, right?
You will be forced to retire. In most of the companies, they have a retirement age. It's no longer an option. They end up a lot of these private companies and a lot of these government organizations, they'll force you to. So some will have a retirement age set at 60, some will have a retirement age set at 62, some will have a retirement age set at 65.
Okay.
So it is not longer your decision in many cases to pull the plug.
Okay.
However, if you plan, so there are small little things. So A, you get lucky in one of these 5 aspects that your parents are not dependent on you. You have a wife who's working, you have a kid late, you start a business that works, your business gets acquired. I don't think any of these are in your control. So
Again, I'd like to push back there in a sense that I feel like you mentioned 5 factors, but I feel the only relevant factor is your business getting acquired. I feel like even if your
well,
benefit,
not really. So I don't know how many times I need to say this. My business getting acquired was, I would say it was an important factor, but out of the 5 things that I mentioned, it was probably the 5th most important
Really? Okay.
factor. I didn't get that much of money in the acquisition.
I
So most of the money that I made. So if you look at it purely from a monetary perspective, I think the biggest thing was that I had a business which worked. And sometimes I like to pretend it was talent, but it was mostly luck. I got lucky that I started working in online education in 2008. I started making educational videos in 2008. No one was doing that at that point of time.
except for Salman Khan Academy.
Salman Khan Academy was, but let me say that very few people were doing it in 2008. I started an online education edtech business in late 2012. No one was doing it at that point of time. So however bad or shitty job I did, but because there were very few options, if not the only option that was available, that helped. So I caught the trend early. And that is what has helped me. And so whether I was good at it or bad at it is a separate decision of that business, but the timing, that worked out. The second big factor was that I decided to move to Jaipur. I decided to move to Jaipur was not it'll save costs or anything like that. It was primarily because my parents were there and I had purchased a flat there. So it felt, I was in Pune at that point of time. Why am I paying rent here? Why am I living away from my parents? I'm anyways working online. I can do all of this in Jaipur, and I could do all of that in Jaipur. Moving to a city like Jaipur brought down my costs significantly on the day of the move itself. The lifestyle inflation that I have seen happen. So 2015 is when I moved, and it have been 10 years. Folks who have stayed in Bangalore, the way their lifestyles have inflated. So in 2015, my batchmates, we were all driving smaller hatchbacks and stuff. A lot of them have moved to sedans in Jaipur, but I very rarely do I see my friends driving 40 lakh rupee cars in Jaipur, and I do see a lot of my Bangalore friends driving 40 lakh rupee cars in Jaipur at the same amount of money. So let's say, so most of my batchmates would probably be making anywhere from 75 lakhs per annum to 1.5 crores per annum. That is the bracket that I'm talking about.
Sorry, 80 lakhs to 1.5?
75 to 1.5. 75 to 1.5.
1.5.
So most of them would be in this sort of a bracket. But the sort of lifestyle that they have varies very, very differently. And the folks who are in Bangalore, for example, they typically end up spending a lot more money than the folks who are in Jaipur, for example. Child's education becomes a huge factor. Most folks I talk to, they are spending 2 lakh rupees, 3 lakh rupees, some even 10 lakh rupees a year on their kids' education in the international board schools.
This is 1 to 7th or?
I would say 5 to 12, 5th to 12.
5th to 12.
5th to 12. On the other hand, the school that my kid goes to, I'm spending 80,000, 90,000 rupees a year, which is significantly lower, but also my kid is in HKG. But in the same school, which is, the Cambridge board school, which is sort of like an international thing.
GCSE?
I think so. That's what it is. And I'm not very sure. So even in that school, if you look at class 11 fee, that is what 1.2, 1.25 lakhs.
Achha.
You won't find that in Bangalore. The fees is going to be significantly higher. The sort of activities that you keep on doing to sort of keeping up with the Sharmas and, he is doing that, so I should also do that. That happens a lot more in Bangalore because people end up doing that sort of stuff in Bangalore. You don't get that sort of opportunities in Jaipur. Then what do you do?
But do you really think that's the phenomenon? Like, I mean, not with your friends per se, but I'm talking in general. But a lot of the spending, do you really think that it's mostly keeping up with the Sharmas, or you think
That plays a role. That definitely.
and why not in Jaipur? Because I would feel like
That's because the
I'm not gonna
because the Sharmas are not spending that much in Jaipur.
Acha. Okay.
So the people you hang out with, the people you are going to offices with, the people you are spending time with, the average spending is significantly higher. The number of times you would see folks in, I would say at any age group, let's say someone who has just started earning, the number of times these, I don't know if I should call them kids or not, but the amount of times that these folks go out in Jaipur versus the number of times these folks go out in Bangalore is significantly higher.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot more opportunities to go out in Bangalore. There are a lot more opportunities to have fun, to live a life and all of that.
The average dinners will be higher in Bangalore.
The average dinners would be significantly
Coffee will be higher in
Bangalore. Average rent is going to be significantly higher. So
Yeah.
for a 25-year-old, the biggest expense is probably going to be rent. The rents are significantly higher in Bangalore and it's not in your control. Move to Jaipur, the rents are significantly cheap. Forget rents. You talk about office spaces. It shocked me when I found out that a typical seat in a WeWork costs 15,000 rupees per seat here.
Yeah.
And if you go to some slightly lesser quality co-working spaces, I don't want to say that Beehive is a slightly lesser quality, but let's say something like a Beehive costs something like 10,000, 12,000 rupees.
Yeah,
seat.
I'll say Beehive is a lesser quality.
I know the guys there, so I don't want to say that, but those guys cost 10 to 12,000 rupees a seat. On the other hand, so I am working at a co-working space in Jaipur. There it is 3,000 rupees a seat, 4,000 rupees a seat, 5,000 rupees a seat.
So I don't know if that's the right comparison, right? I mean, obviously there are more people in Bangalore. So it's the market economics playing that.
Yeah. So I'm saying that I'm not saying that the prices are unfair. I just want to highlight the cost of living differences which exists in a city like Jaipur versus a city like Bangalore.
Makes sense.
And why stop at Jaipur? So you can go to even smaller towns. If you leave aside the, let's say, top 15 cities of India by population, you move to anything beyond the top 15 cities, the cost of living drops even further over there. I don't know what you can get, what sort of place you can get for rent at 50,000 in Mumbai versus 50,000 in Bangalore versus 50,000 in Jaipur and versus 50,000 in a place like Alwar. So that makes a difference. So cost of living in India is not a monolith. There are huge disparities in cost of living in tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities in India.
I think we will close here.
Sure.
I mean, if I pull any thread, I'm sure it's going to drag another 15 minutes. So, unless you want me to.
Your call, I'm free.
Is there any specific thread that might be important which I might have missed? In terms of fire,
You can talk about why I'm working now.
yeah, that's I did want to ask that earlier on. Yeah. I actually wanted to start off with that, but I just couldn't connect that. Anyways, so it will be hypocritical of me to not ask you this, which is obviously you are a proponent of the fire movement. You obviously talk a lot about fire, but here you are starting another company. Why so?
So, it would be wrong to say that, that fire is essentially like an end point. You achieve it and you are done. A lot of times I see fire as a solution to a problem. The problem being you don't like the sort of work that you are doing. So what do? You stop doing that job. Fire essentially exists as a last resort. More often than not, when you don't like the work, it's got less to do with the work, it's got more to do with the people that you're working with. And sometimes it's also to do with the work that you are doing. you should essentially try maybe changing your team, maybe changing the company that you are working in, maybe changing the field that you are working in. You should try all of that. And if everything else fails, then fire becomes the only option. So I worked as a math teacher for most of my life. But after I started the business grew. After the company got acquired, broadly, my work shifted more towards managing people, generating sales, generating revenue, the teaching element of it. So when I started my career, 95% of my responsibility was teaching and 5% was just managing other stuff. By the time I quit, maybe 5% of my responsibility was teaching and 95% of it was the other stuff. And I could, there was no way out for me to, change that and become a teacher completely. Because if I did that, the amount of money that I would make as a teacher is insignificant compared to the amount of money that you can make as an entrepreneur. Or, my last designation I was director of content sales at $1 billion company. So that is because I was a director of content sales. That's why I was making the amount of money that I was making. If I was just a teacher, I would be making 10%, 20% of that. So that was the reason, because I didn't really like the work, that I quit. And I had the option to quit. I had the money to quit. So that was in 2022. And beyond that, so around last year, and after that happened, a lot of people started contacting me and talking to me, okay, how do I also do it? And the solution, how do you also do it? Boss, you need to get lucky. There is very little things in your control. And then I started realizing that a bunch of these people are making some of the most basic financial mistakes, stuff that felt very, very obvious to me. One of the examples would be, I think it is obvious to most people that if you have a credit card, you get a credit card bill, you should pay that credit card bill in time. I used to believe everyone did that.
Or does it impact your credit score?
It impacts your credit score, or if you pay the minimum balance, you have to pay a very high interest rate, 35% sort of an interest rate. I used to think, why would anyone be paying that 35% interest rate? And then I looked at the numbers. So SBI Cards is now a listed company. They put out the data. 56% of credit card holders are paying that high interest rate. Yeah. So
that's a really high number.
Yeah, more than half the people. So something that I felt like that, okay, 95%, I genuinely believe that 95% of the people will be paying their credit card bills on time.
You mean they're paying the portion of it and then leaving there for interest, is it?
I think there are 3 categories that SBI Cards list out. One is the people who pay the bill in full. That is around 45% who pay the bill in full every month. Then there are 2 more categories that they have. One is the category who has an outstanding balance and they have converted it to an EMI. And that EMI is also at a significantly higher, something like an 18%, 16% sort of a rate. And those people are again around 25 to 30%. I'll share the exact data with you and you can perhaps put that as a screenshot. And then there are around 25% of people who are paying just the minimum balance, which is criminal. Boss, if you can get a credit card, you can get a personal loan and pay that back. At least convert it to an EMI. But 25% of the people don't even do that. So it was shocking that stuff that seems obvious to me, but it doesn't seem obvious to people. And there are bunch of similar mistakes that people keep on making. There is a large number of people whose TDS gets deducted and they file their taxes improperly, or they don't know how to file their taxes and they don't get so what happens is your TDS get deducted. If you do a little bit of tax planning, you will get a refund from the income tax department. For that, you need to do 2 things. Very little, very, very basic tax planning and filing the tax returns properly. I don't think that this stuff is going to take you more than 10 hours in a year. People don't even spend those 10 hours to get the money back from the income tax department. So there are so many inefficiencies which exist in the system just because people are lazy, people are unaware. And this is something that I realized when people started talking to me. So, and then once a lot of people started talking to me, it started becoming a problem. Okay, how do I talk to a large number of people? So, middle of last year, what I did was I created a custom GPT where I put all of this stuff so that you can talk to. So I call the custom GPT Handa Uncle, which is the name of my current company as well, where they can come and chat with a chatbot, which will essentially respond in the same way that perhaps I would. That became popular. And that is when I took a call that, okay, either let just this be a fun project and let it continue. And that's when a couple of my friends, my batchmates from college, Madhukar and Vikas, they got on board that they said, okay, fine, this is a big enough problem. People are using it, people are liking it. Can we potentially try and build a business out of it? So then I took a call that, okay, fine, let's try building this and see if there is some sort of solution that can be figured out. But the core idea as of today here is I really like doing this stuff. I am worried about the fact that maybe if I work on this for another 10 years, right now I really like it because it's the building phase, it's the creation phase. Every day something new I'm doing, something innovative I'm doing, I'm using my head. It's quite possible that 10 years down the line, if this business becomes a big business, I'll once again end up in a managerial sort of a role where I'm managing people and looking after Excel sheets and how the sales are growing and how the revenue is growing. So maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line, again, it'll become something that I'm not enjoying it anymore. And then perhaps I can think of a second retirement or, you know, and again, my first business worked because I was lucky, because I was early. That does not really guarantee that this business is going to work. Maybe it fails in another 2 years, in another 1 year. Then I'll be back to the retirement mode. I'll be forced to it. I'll be either forced into it or the work will evolve and it'll become boring at some point of time. And that's when I'll pull the plug again. But as of now, I'm having fun doing it. And that's the optionality that I have because I have the money, I have the resources, I have the time. And hopefully, I have a little bit of understanding of the consumer market as well.
I hope you get, in your terms, lucky the second time as well. And thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it, especially on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here.